many, many moons ago, I married a chap who was 13 years my senior. I came from a broken family, so I didn't have any kind of male role model as such. But married him, had a brief courtship, married him, kind of blue-eyed boy, thought the world of me, so I thought. And it very swiftly, during that time, I'd started to become ostracised from the remnants of broken family that I had. So by the time I actually married, I was cut off. I'd started to change how I looked, stopped wearing skirts, makeup and the usual thing, by his requests. And the physical assault had already started, so I was completely subservient at that point. But because I'd already come from being in a fight-or-flight situation, from having quite a rough upbringing as such, the transition was very seamless, to be honest, and the conditioning was kind of almost Pavlovian conditioning, to the point of he didn't have to make much of an effort for me to kind of acquiesce.
Comply.
Absolutely.
And that was you being afraid of what would happen if you didn't, essentially.
That, and also because I'd been ostracised from my family, so the only connections I had outside of the four walls of the matrimonial home was through him as the conduit, either through his family or his social circle. He'd go out and lock me in the house. So I had 2 children with him and had another one which sadly died at birth through a genetic issue. But throughout all 3 pregnancies, didn't matter that I was pregnant, I was beaten black and blue. And
domestic abuse, physical domestic abuse often starts during pregnancy, doesn't it?
Mine had started well before that. Yeah. So by then I was just the kind of the punch bag, and it got to the point that it no longer had any impact. I mean, even now to these days, 20 odd years later, I still have a numb patch about the size of 50 pp on my scalp. So the constant knuckling as such. So that's the only kind of physical characteristic. Obviously, the mental stuff stays with you. But for me, I put up with for so many years, and was very much on my own as such. The hair that broke the camel's back for me, I've reached out to the police umpteen times, and one particular officer came out to me, I mean, thankfully things have changed, and said that I needed to learn how to deal with the stress and strains of an everyday marriage. Bearing in mind, it's a very quiet village in Yorkshire 20 odd years ago, very different to what it is nowadays. But
did people not want to hear you when you said what was happening?
Yeah. It's very much behind closed doors. It's domestic.
God.
It's domestic. Yeah. So kids put up and shut up, go away, silly girl type thing. Very condescending, which then compressed and compounded to the point that it became such an efficient, coercive control cycle that I even started to gaslight myself, thinking, well, it can't be all that bad. Surely it's not that bad. I'm just making it up.
And not every marriage is perfect, la la la.
Absolutely. There's I'm covering the bruise or wearing polo neck jumpers in the height of summer to hide bruise on my neck and so on. Thinking, oh, this is not right. But for me, the hair that broke the camel's back was when, I say, my 2 surviving children were aged 1 and 4, and he beat the 4-year-old. So for me, that was it. I am of the opinion I'm a proper typical northern mama bear, as I call it. People can say what they wish about me, I do not care.
But not your kids.
Touch my kids, and I'll go through them like a hot knife through butter. So, but because I was scared of him, because it was a lot bigger than me, I'm barely 5 feet in my socks. And it was a lot bigger and older, wiser, so on. This happened on a Sunday, so I waited. I got my oldest to nursery on the Monday and told nursery about it and said, I'm going to go back home. He's still in bed and I'm going to ring the police. I'm just letting you know in terms of safeguarding duty of care. So I got the phone out of the hallway, dragged it round into the lounge, put the weight of myself and a bookcase behind the door so he could not get from one place to the other, and rang 3 9s and had him arrested. Thankfully, with the help of, I don't know if it's the group's still going, but the National Centre for Domestic Violence, NCDV, and social services, I relocated. And to cut a long story short, well over 2 decades have now passed. My children have grown up without him. I managed to get a court order, took some doing to prevent him because he was stalking the streets and so on, trying to find out where we lived and so on. And we've now since moved from the place that you mentioned before, so I'll not say where, just in case he is listening or someone who knows him is listening. But relocated in the south of England, very, very happy, married an absolute saint of a chap who loves my kids, absolutely dotes on them. I'm happy. I've been back to uni, done a master's, done a PhD. I run a support group that's global, that centres around support for families that have lost children to the genetic problem that my son had, that I lost 23 years ago.
So you've reclaimed the detail of your life and run with it, haven't you? Yeah.
I've recorrected the narrative, and that for me has been a very cathartic process.